back to this week's episode. Today, we are talking about the questions from last week's episode. So if you missed it, make sure that you pause and go back and listen to it because this 17 weeks, we are focusing on the scale your small business process. So last week we talked about mindset, and this week is the Q&A. So we're going to review all the questions that we got from last week's episode. One of the main questions that I received was, what do I do if I am stuck in this quagmire, if I want to change my mindset, but I always have the worst luck? And the first thing I want to say about that is we all feel like that. Every single person has felt that way. And it's something that I talked about in an earlier podcast that I think it's really important that we allow ourselves one day to wallow. So what that means is that you give yourself one day to be upset, to cry, to be angry, to journal, whatever you need to do to make yourself feel better, but you have set a deadline for yourself that as soon as that day is over, you're going to pick yourself up and get back to what you were doing beforehand. Because I think what can happen is when you stay in bed and you're so upset and devastated and things don't happen, it just gets worse. Your mind takes you places that it shouldn't be. So while giving yourself a set deadline, you know that you've got a certain amount of time to feel bad, eat your ice cream, sit on the couch, whatever you need to do to make yourself feel better, give yourself permission to do that. But also knowing that this time tomorrow, that time period is over. You've got to pick yourself up. You've got to get back to what you were doing. You've got to move forward. Because if you don't set that deadline, sometimes those days of wallowing can turn into weeks or maybe even months. And you've got to make sure that you don't let yourself fall into that pattern of being sad for weeks and months. You've got to move forward. And, this technique has really helped me. There have been some pretty significant things that have happened to me in my life that are just like, whoa. And being able to give myself that deadline of, you've got one day, you do whatever you need, sleep, do whatever you need, but after that, we've got to move forward. And it's been super helpful for me. So I hope that if you're in a situation that this advice can help you as well. Take care of yourself, do whatever you need to do to make yourself feel better, but you've got to set yourself a deadline. Another question that we received was about routines, that people really want those routines, but they don't know how to create them. And more importantly, people feel that they just don't have time in their day to create a routine. Now, I think one of the most important things that you can do if you are in that situation where you're like, I have no time, I'm so busy, there's no time to start a new routine, there's no time to add in a workout, there's no time to add anything extra. And what I think is the most important thing that you need to do in that scenario is you need to track your time by making sure that you are seeing what you are doing over the course of a week, for example, could be huge for you, because what's going to happen is you're going to be able to see those pockets of time that maybe you're scrolling on Instagram or watching TV or maybe doing something mindless that really is not benefiting you but could really change your life when combined together. Now, if this is something that interests you and you're like, I gotta figure out a way to do this, I just created a quick spreadsheet on my computer that lists all 24 hours of the day. And I just made a habit of writing down what I was doing every single hour. Now, if you're like, listen, I'm so busy, I don't have time to do that, maybe do it on your phone. Create something inside your notes app so that way it's just easy for you to fill in. But I can tell you, after doing this process multiple times throughout different stages of my life, it has really changed things for me because I realized, holy smokes, I didn't even know that I was wasting X number of hours doing this, which didn't propel me forward, wasn't serving me. But had I not tracked my time, I probably wouldn't have realized it. So making sure that you're tracking that time every day for 1 week can make a huge, huge difference. I really encourage you to do that exercise because it can really change things for you and really put things into perspective. Now, one other thing about routines I think it's important to do, and this is something if you listen to one of my other podcasts where I talked about my morning routine and my evening routine, It's writing down everything that you do during that time. So, those things that you're doing already as a habit, you're getting up, you're putting your clothes on, you're going downstairs, you're working out, you're brushing your teeth, you're taking a shower, whatever that looks like for you, you should be writing that down as well. So, when you refer back to your time tracking, you'll be able to see that it's something that you do consistently. Now, when you're developing those routines, you can also look at that and say, okay, I've got this pocket of time where I'm scrolling social media while I'm drying my hair. That time could be better allocated to listening to a podcast. I actually have a waterproof speaker that is on my mirror that I can listen to podcasts while I'm drying my hair. Now, I know that might sound a little kooky for some people, but it actually makes the time go by faster. I know a lot of my women out there probably be like, oh my gosh, I get it. It takes forever to dry your hair. So even those small pockets of time when you might be doing something mindless, like even drying your hair, might be an opportunity for you to learn something or help you memorize your keynote or anything like that. Finding those giant chunks of time is probably not going to happen. So, taking those small pockets of time and combining them together and filling them with something that propels you and your business forward is going to be so much more helpful versus trying to make yourself get up 3 hours earlier in a day. It's just not going to work. But you can pick up time all over the place and combine that so you've got that extra time. Another question we received was about vision boarding, and this is something that I love to talk about. So the question specifically asked, how often should I create a vision board? Now, most people are familiar with creating an annual vision board, and it is so fun to look back on those and see what you've accomplished over the year. But here's one thing that you might give some thought to. Something that I do is I have an annual vision board, but I also have a quarterly vision board. So what I'm doing is I'm taking that quarterly vision board. Now, a lot of those things are off my annual vision board and they're, broken down into quarterly chunks. But what I really like to do is I create my vision board digitally. Now, if you are someone who likes to cut the pictures out of magazines, you could still totally do that. You could just scan it into an image on your computer. What I do is create that digital vision board and I use it on my computer desktop. I put it as a wallpaper on my phone. So it's always front of mind because I feel like if you create this beautiful vision board and maybe it's in your notebook or tucked away somewhere, maybe behind the door of your office and you never see it, it's something that you're not going to remember. You've got to keep it fresh and top of mind. So whether you create that vision board and it hangs in a prominent space in your office, or you do something like I do where it's always on my computer, it's always on my phone, it's always top of mind, that is going to help propel me forward and say, okay, the tasks that I needed to get done to make that dream a reality are right there every single day. Now, this is not new. There are a lot of people that have talked about just doing those little tiny tasks every day move you towards your goal, and I completely agree with them. They are absolutely right. And so in some further episodes, we'll jump in about how to break down those goals, how to make that task list much more manageable and honestly quite doable. So in those extra chunks of time that you've carved out, when you were tracking your time before, you'll actually have time to do them. Because when you're first starting out, it might seem completely overwhelming, where you're like, I am running around with my hair on fire. I don't have time to make a vision board. I don't have time to talk about routines. I don't have time to talk about anything. And one thing too that I want to caution you is you've got to take a deep look at your season of life. If you are a brand new mom with a brand new baby, this is not the time to talk about your vision board. Maybe, maybe not. It just depends on what season of life you're in. So you have to remember that you've got to give yourself grace with these things. Don't beat yourself up or bully yourself thinking, I need to be doing this. This person is the same age as me and they're here. That's not what we're doing here. We are not comparing ourselves to anyone else. We are having a competition every single day with ourselves and no one else. So, If you're interested in learning more about vision boarding, make sure you drop some comments or questions below. If you're watching on YouTube or if you're listening to the podcast app, make sure that you send me a message over on Instagram because I would love to open up this conversation more and find out if this is something that you're interested in. Any questions that I've covered today, make sure you let me know what you enjoyed or what other questions. Next week, we're going to focus on the second pillar of the Scale Your Small Business process, and I'm excited to dive in with you then. See you next week.